Okay, so I've got a new blank session set up, and I activated and deactivated my rulers and marker bars, like I said before, and I made sure the clock was set to minutes and seconds. Now we're going to prepare for a little recording session. So I'm going to make myself a bunch of tracks again. We'll say just 6 so we can have some room to play with. And so to record, what we need to do is, well, we'll ultimately push this record button up here. But with all these tracks, the software also needs to know where we want to record to. And that's why each track has its own record button. And so Ardour uses different terminology, but normally we call this the record enable. And you might notice that as soon as you turn it on, you hear your own sound coming through the microphone and out the speakers. And so you might want to use this mute button. That way we can see here on this level meter that Ardour can hear us, but it's not coming through the output. And so we'll record enable this track. And then up here we'll record arm. We'll say, okay, next time I push play, it's going to be recording. So we've got these kind of two levels of activating recording. And then as soon as I push play, we'll see time starts rolling. It's starting to create a region, and every once in a while it will fill in the waveforms that it sees. And then when we're ready to stop, we can hit spacebar or click the stop button. And if that was just a test recording, I can just go ahead and click it and delete it. It's also convenient to hit the return key. As you notice, my position marker is all the way out at 11 seconds and it fell off the screen. It's all the way, you can see down here, it's all the way outside my range of view. So if we hit the return key, it comes back to 0. And so that's a nice way to always go back to the beginning. Okay, so let's talk about what to record a bit. I recommend going to the kitchen. In general, you want interesting sounds. It's trickier to find sounds that are sustained. And in the kitchen is where you're going to find a lot of things like bowls with resonating, with resonant cavities, maybe bottles as well. Also, many bowls are made out of ceramic or sheet metal. That's going to resonate really nicely, be very responsive to vibrations. You might also find some tools like a can opener or an egg beater that would allow you to get some interesting clanking kinds of sounds. And well, what happens if you mix an egg beater with something resonant like an empty bowl? If you put water in the bowl and slosh it around as well, you can slosh it around and that can be a sound you could use. But also if you get a bowl that dings nicely and pour different amounts of water into it or slosh the water around, tilt the water around, as you ding on it, you can get some nice bends to the pitch of the resonance that happens. The kitchen is a nice place to start. But any place that has those kinds of features or any other kind of interesting sound would be fine. You can also just use a built-in microphone on a phone, for example, and go out and record things like a bicycle wheel spinning, a motor running, birds or traffic outside, pedestrian traffic or cars, wind rustling, leaves rustling, and just read your manufacturer instructions on getting files off of your phone into your computer. One way might be to email them, for example, but that might be a little tedious. But then you would just take those files and drag them into tracks and work that way. So in general, I recommend getting all your materials together and make one big long recording session because the sounds in between are likely to be interesting, and that way you don't have to worry about starting and stopping also. And so keep in mind as you're shopping for sounds that you want to find interesting motifs, sounds that are short and recognizable, but complex enough that they're interesting, and so we would notice different features as they're transformed. Also, try to capture some textures, some sounds that are ongoing and bumpy in various ways, but are still not very, but are still basically saying the same. And then try to get some gestures, sounds that are gradually changing, like getting louder or softer, faster or slower. And my final tip is not just to capture a single version of a sound. For one, you might have been coughing or rustling your clothes, or a dog was barking outside, and that might ruin the aspects of it you want to keep. So get a few of everything anyway. But also try to perform some textures and gestures with each thing you do. Even some more complex single bursts of hits. So you might capture some interesting motifs that way. That is going to save you tons of work in the editing stage. And so just play with these things and see what comes naturally. And then when you go shopping through your source material, you might be delighted to find what you find. So you don't have to decide everything in advance. This is a process of discovery. So I'm in my office here, and so I found an empty water bottle, and so that has some interesting sounds to it. I can tap on it, and let's see. It sounds differently if I have the mouth pointing toward the microphone, as if the mouth is pointing away from the microphone, or if the mouth is covered. And so each of those can be interesting. It also sounds interesting if I slap the opening with my flat palm. And let's see, I can also take it and get some more complex sounds like that, dropping. Okay. And let's see how I can get a texture out of this. If I keep it kind of off balance and I'm just slapping it back and forth, we'll try this. And in general, for capturing a texture, you want to record it longer than I just did. Try to go for at least 30 seconds. It'll change over time, and that way you'll have some nice variety, and you won't have to play with trying to loop it, and then it starts to sound too mechanistic. But okay, so we got some single hits, and we got some motifs and some textures out of that. What can I do for a gesture? Well, just try this speeding up, slowing down thing with it. And then try soloing with it just a little bit. Be expressive with it. And if you're not sure if you don't feel like anything comes naturally when I say that, think about giving a speech with your sound instrument. So maybe say some words in your mind. Maybe they're something you've remembered or something that you're reading, or just make it up. Have a conversation. Make it something interesting and maybe emotional in some way. But that'll get you some more interesting rhythms to work with. Okay, let's see. Some of my other sound sources here. I have a top, and so I could just drop it and make some clicking sounds. And each of those is rather complex, so it could be nice to have that. I can drop it on different things, like if I drop it on the bottle, and then it falls on the table. Okay, and then of course I can do what a top is supposed to do, spin it. And let's see, that's a very quiet sound. So I'm going to put it on a coaster and hold it up to the microphone. Oh, and the coaster happens to be hollow, and so it adds a nice quasi-pitched sound. Let me try a little piece of cardboard here. Well, I can't hold it steady, but I got some interesting other kinds of sounds anyway. I'm not sure that my top is very gesturable, except for clicking. So I could bang it against my hollow coaster here. Oh, this is a nice lesson. It's hollow, and hollow things sound differently when you listen to or strike the middle compared to the edges. And so move your object around your microphone, and also move your striking object, your excitation source around your object. So these are nice. Okay, I also have the wrapper that the top came in, which is this nice crinkly cellophane that cats love. And so I can do some individual crunches. And this would be very nice for a very crackly texture. So I can do that a long time. I can also try flicking it. Getting some freer rhythms that way. I don't have any metal bowls, but I do have the a bell of a trumpet, and so that's nice and metal. And with something metal, you want to let it ring as much as possible, so you want to touch it as little as possible. Suspend it from a string if you can. And so if I instead hold it firmly with my fist, well, all of my flabby skin on my fingers is going to absorb all those vibrations, and it just sounds, well, it sounds different, but it sounds like pretty much anything else. But I can get that nice metal resonance if I just, say, hang it from my fingernail. And dropping works too, and so we can get some good dropping sounds. And let's see, I'm going to see if I can kind of keep it rocking back and forth. Here, this time to get it, if I do it with my finger, you know, it's just a stick of meat, and that's going to absorb a lot of vibrations. That's not going to be as good as, I'm going to use some scissors, nice hard metal scissors, and that's not going to absorb any vibrations. And I'm going to see if I can get something worth a texture out of this. Ooh, let me get that ending there. Okay. So with these things, it's nice that you can capture organic variations in sounds, and that's going to be very difficult for you to do in Ardour later. As you're recording, you want to also, before you start recording, take a quiet moment and listen around you. See what the silence sounds like. Are there noises that are easy to ignore but are still going to make it into your recording? Are there any fans running? Are your clothes or your jewelry a little noisy, depending on the fabric and, the materials that they're made of, and, the way if they're dangly or not? You might want to do something about that before starting to record. What about cars outside? People walking by or in the next room? Fans are really problematic. So anyway, what you want to do is get your microphone away from those things as much as possible. So you might want to turn off an air conditioner to make sure it doesn't come on at the wrong time, or wait until it goes off. Or if your refrigerator comes on and goes off, well, you could record the refrigerator, but also you might want to wait until it stops buzzing to record other sounds if you're deciding to record in the kitchen, for example. You might want to record at a certain time of day when there's less noise outside from people or cars or birds or bugs in the evening. And also notice if your laptop fan is running. If your laptop is working extra hard, it might need to turn on its fan. And if you're using your laptop's built-in speaker, it's also going to capture that fan noise. And so it's not the worst thing if we have to work with it, but it's certainly going to shape your project in a certain way. One way of getting a microphone away from your built-in laptop microphone is if you happen to have headphones that have a microphone on them. And so that way you can get, maybe a couple feet away from your laptop. And as long as you're sure you're recording, you could point the laptop away so that the fan noise is being blocked from your headphone microphone. Okay, and when you're recording your sounds, you want them to be full but not overflowing. And so if we look down here toward negative infinity, these sounds down here, well, we could record them and they would be captured okay. But in order for us to hear them, they would be really tiny and we would have to zoom way in order to capture them. And if you imagine doing that to an image, you may have seen before that a lot of noise and jagged edges get exaggerated with that. Yeah, we call this the noise floor down here. And so if we have to magnify a sound that was recorded down here, well, the noise floor is going to get magnified with it. So we want our sound to be as loud as possible. But we don't want it to be so loud that it overflows. At some point at the top of the red here, it's going to get to a point where it can't capture sound anymore and the tops of your waveforms will get cut off. And, well, imagine a nice smooth sine wave. If it got so big that it turned into, if it got amplified so much that the smooth curves fell off the top and bottom of the page, well, it would start to turn into a square wave. It would get corners, and that's not smooth. It doesn't sound smooth either. And so that's what's happening to your sound whenever you get over the top here. So you want to focus on this yellow area just below 0, and minimize getting into the red area. Don't get too low. Don't let your sound get so quiet that it'll fall into the noise floor. Don't let it get so loud that it falls off the maximum here, and we call that clipping when it does. Keep it in the middle most of the time. If it does get in the red sometimes, that's fine. That's fine just on how the way this program works, but be mindful of this area of the screen and try to stay in the middle as much as you can. So here I go, actually recording some sounds.